So the idea is that this perception, this impression of real-time, omnipresent surveillance motivates the inmates to be on their best behavior. This, for example, from 2014, as the EU envisioned the implementation of these new technologies. Here you have in yellow, you can see genetically enhanced humans, transhumanism, and the enhanced mankind, artificially enhanced, the technological singularity. In 2022, we saw an executive order coming out of President Biden's White House. And this I thought was quite interesting, a section of the order, genetic engineering technologies, techniques. We need to pursue these to be able to write circuitry for cells and predictably program biology in the same way in which we write software and program computers. Quote, more concentrated, unscrupulous, repressive, and militaristic control by a big business, big government partnership, that would preserve the privileges of the ultra-rich, the corporate overseers, and the brass in the military and civilian order.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Vance Evermond, and I am honored to be your host today on KLA TV, the media network. We have an important discussion ahead, one that delves into the intersections of technology, human autonomy, and the future of society. Today, we will be exploring the themes of the research paper, Cyborgs Are Us, the bio-nano panopticon of injected bodies, co-authored by Dr. Valerie Curie and Dr. Daniel Brody. This work critically examines the integration of bio-nanotechnology into human bodies and its implications for surveillance, control, and personal sovereignty in the digital age. To help us navigate this complex and thought-provoking topic, I am privileged to introduce Dr. Daniel Brody, Professor of Applied Linguistics at Okinawa Christian University in Japan. With a deep background in language, media analysis, and critical theory, Dr. Brody brings a unique perspective on the ways power structures use language and technology to shape public perception. The questions I will pose today are designed to provoke deeper thought and foster awareness about the key issues raised in Cyborgs Are Us. They will encourage critical discussions on technological ethics, societal impacts, and the balance between innovation and human rights. So without further ado, Dr. Brody, could you begin by introducing yourself and sharing what motivated you to co-author this research paper?
Thank you, Vance, so much for the invitation to come and talk and to go over the details that we've been trying to explore over the past 4 or 5 years. So I appreciate the invitation, and also appreciate the questions. They're really good questions, and I would like to, I had to take note because they're very complex answers to the questions. So my background is in psycholinguistics, but my research area has broadened over the past 20 years and intersected with cognitive linguistics and neurolinguistics. I'm really interested in how language, signs, symbols, colors, sounds, image, how they're all used in the media landscape to influence our perceptions and our emotions of the world around us. So my research has raised more questions about the differences between the mediated world and the empirical world. And it seems to me that more and more, especially over the past 20 years, at least since 9/11, the mediated world has become increasingly more powerful over our perceptions of reality, as we're urged as citizens to pay more and more attention to the mediation of the world through the increasing number of screens. So I've been in Japan doing this work. I originally came here about 30 years ago. I was teaching in Korea for a couple of years, and before that, I was in the military for about 7 years doing imagery analysis. So a lot of my professional experience when I was in the military has been very helpful in seeing patterns in the analysis that I do in language and media. So that's just, I guess, a brief introduction. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Brody. So my first question will be this one: what ethical considerations arise from integrating bio-nanotechnology into human bodies, particularly through medical interventions like mRNA vaccines?
I think this is a great question. The term, first of all, maybe we can just talk briefly about the question itself and the term intervention. I really think this is an interesting way to frame a discussion because, the term intervention, to me, it kind of frames a kind of assault. The connotation suggests helplessness of the object of the intervention, or a kind of self-justified interference or intrusion against the target. I imagine, for example, a drug addict, for example, whose family sees it necessary to intervene in this person's life and carry out some sort of intrusion that will, that will help this addict to recover some normalcy. Also, you can, if you think of the past, when so-called humanitarian interventions, quote unquote, were carried out in various African nations, these precipitated any number of preemptive attacks. The term itself, it reminded me of Celia Farber's pretty famous essay, I imagine still, the 1989 essay in Spin magazine about the intervention that was leveled against dying AIDS patients in this very poisonous AZT drug that had been abandoned for cancer patients, was sort of repurposed for to see how it would work on AIDS patients. So, the term itself, intervention, is really interesting. And when I think about nanotechnology, nanotechnology interventions, I think they can be understood in a very similar light. It seems to me that no one in power likely knows conclusively whether the integration of nanotechnology with flesh and blood is actually safe. And I think this is why many, many years ago, decades ago, Antoinetta Gatti and Stefano Montanari pioneered the area of nanopathology. So if we really want to see the latest research on these integrations of nanotechnology, we have to look at the work that they've been doing for many years now. As any good scientist, Antonietta and Stefano asked the kinds of questions that seems to me aren't being asked today by so-called scientists. The question of whether nanotechnology is something that is actually safe to be integrated with human bodies. Is it okay, to use these technologies? And, if so, what are the effects? We expect, what are some of the effects we would expect to see on human health? Any ethical considerations about their uses, it seems to me, have been sort of hastily reduced to considerations about their potential profits for investors. In this blind march, in my estimation, toward the promise of profits, has translated into lots and lots of casualties. Everyone talks about the lipid nanoparticle, right? Some people studying microscopy, doing microscopy studies, say that there are trillions of these lipid nanoparticles on the loose in bodies, billions of people all around the world. So my question would be, why hasn't, mainstream media, why haven't they done any stories of excess deaths, for example, in the wake of the campaign, the initial campaigns, injection campaigns? So this is just some of my thoughts about these quote unquote interventions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Brody. So the following question is about how does the concept of the bio-nano panopticon reflect the potential for technological surveillance within our biological systems?
Well, this is Bentham's 18th century idea, right? About social theory idea about prisons and how to rehabilitate or incarcerate. I think those ideas are actually, quite important today, very prescient. He was referring to a prison in which inmates, they don't know if or when they're being surveilled, being watched. And so the idea is that this perception, this impression of real-time, omnipresent surveillance motivates the inmates, to be on their best behavior. Where have we heard that before? Very, very recently, within the past few weeks. And this is precisely what we're hearing, the technocrats and their minions talking about today. I prepared a slide, if you'd like me to share some of the details of what this might look like. I believe this is from a paper from 2015 on the Internet of Bio-Nano Things. This is a figure that is quite interesting. You can see that the components of the Internet of Bio-Nano Things is comprised of nano nodes, nano routers, nano micro interface devices, bio-cyber interfaces, gateways, and application-specific servers. I guess what we're seeing here, it's difficult to see from the text alone, but the idea is that bodies, blood, and brains will serve as media to they'll serve as media to it's hard to conceptualize the body as the architecture for connectivity. You can see, maybe I can like illustrate this better in this slide. So you can see how sort of nano, micro, and macro scale devices will perform various tasks such as data sensing, transmission, and computation. I suppose if you thought of your laptop or your smartphone, the IOBNT, the Internet of Bio Nano Things, is comprised of various components that carry out a range of similar tasks. So you can imagine your flesh and blood are now form part of the integrated circuits in the global central nervous system. You have the nanoscale, microscale, and macroscale devices here.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Very impressive, actually. And my following question is about what are the implications of such technologies on personal privacy and bodily autonomy?
It seems to me that because bodies and brains will be connected to the internet in real time, privacy and bodily autonomy will disappear. In the United States, there's the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution that limits and prohibits the government from conducting unwarranted searches and seizures. Well, these new technologies leave citizens exposed to intrusion, not just of house and home, but the biological housing of your soul, your mind. I think if this all sounds kind of like science fiction, it does seem quite absurd. Even the slides that I've shown you from these scholarly papers, if it does seem like science fiction, consider the extent to which, say, the technologies have already been well established in policy papers and executive orders throughout Europe, the UK, Canada, the United States, Australia. I thought it would be nice to point to some of the evidence in policies. This, for example, from 2014, as the EU envisions the implementation of these new technologies.
Wow.
You can see, I've highlighted some interesting sections in here. I think the whole document is very interesting, but very telling. But here you have in yellow, you can see genetically enhanced humans, transhumanism, and the enhanced mankind, artificially enhanced, the technological singularity. I mean, this is like long-term. And so you can also see, I don't know if you can see the pointer here, my cursor.
Yes, I do. NBIC.
Yeah, the NBIC, we'll talk about that in more detail a little bit. Sure. So, keep in mind, this is 2014. You can see this slide kind of struck me because of what seems to be, the call for these technological interventions in the name of securing peace and security, or peace and safety. And this actually put me in mind of a passage in the New Testament, the Thessalonians, for when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction will come upon them.
Yeah.
So we can see today many calls for peace and safety, or peace and security, as it seems like a pretext for many kinds of interventions. Of course, we have the technological or the technocratic interventions here. In 2022, we saw an executive order coming out of President Biden's White House. And this I thought was quite interesting, a section of the order, genetic engineering technologies, techniques. We need to pursue these to be able to write circuitry for cells and predictably program biology in the same way in which we write software and program computers. So it seems to me that this is just more of the same, conceptualizing the body as a machine, very reductive thinking about dynamic, complex biological processes, and how human beings tend to oversimplify and use these, I think on one hand, very good metaphors, but they're misleading metaphors too. So many people think of the, biological mechanisms as machinery. It's useful on one hand, but not at all on the other. And then you have in Canada, the exploration, the policy positions exploring biodigital convergence, which the head of the World Economic Forum has been talking about for some time. The integration of the digital identity and the biological identity, et cetera. So these can be found in, government position papers and white papers and policies. And then you have the EU that spent a billion euro, I believe, on nanotechnology, graphene, and then the UK's human augmentation, the dawn of a new paradigm. So lots of really interesting transhumanist interventions.
So now, my following question is, in what ways might bio-nanotechnology alter the relationship between individuals and governing bodies or corporations?
I would say the distinction between, if I understand your question correctly, the distinction between governing bodies, and corporations. So governing bodies would be like governments, I imagine. I think you can argue is effectively erased. Was it Mussolini who said that, fascism is the marriage of industry and state? Bertram Gross actually covered this really beautifully in 1980 in his book, Friendly Fascism. And he warned about a new form of fascism germinating in the world, the post-World War II world, which kind of is, dressed up and fancy. It comes to you with a wink and a smile and, promise of peace and security and speed and efficiency. Everything everyone wants in a world where, we're pressed into service and 9-to-5 jobs and how, what's life all about? We're asking these questions about what is life about? And we're spending most of our waking hours trying to commute to work. And so Bertram Gross talked about this at great length. It's a brilliant book. I would highly recommend it, A Friendly Fascism. So he was writing about the really sophisticated systems of information collection and kind of like emerging forms of remote electronic surveillance. And it's amazing that he saw this in the 1970s. He produced this book. And one of his observations is, particularly prescient today, it is a kind of a beguiling sort of fascism has arisen. And I want to get the quote just right. And quote, more concentrated, unscrupulous, repressive, and militaristic control by a big business, big government partnership, that would preserve the privileges of the ultra-rich, the corporate overseers, and the brass in the military and civilian order. Now, if that's not, an image of what we see today, in these public-private partnerships and the rise of all these global forums of unelected people making decisions for citizens, human beings, I don't know what is. I mean, it's some brilliant description there. And, it certainly appears, I would say, we're now witnessing a new form of technocratic order, taking seats of power and authority. So the relationship between new classes of citizens or subjects, you can say, will essentially be a relationship of master and servant. And it seems a lot of people don't want to or can't see this like tidal wave of technocratic control coming, which is, I think, part of the problem that we all face is that how do you help people, coax them into seeing what's unfolding around them, to look away from their smartphones or, from the one screen or another screen, and awaken people to what's unfolding. Big problem.
Could the integration of these technologies exacerbate existing inequalities in healthcare access or create new form of societal stratification?
I think you can get a pretty nice sense of stratification, social stratification. If you look back at the Proteus documents that came out in the mid 2000, I think around 2007, 2008. And the goal of the Proteus project was to offer this kind of like expert commentary that will help strategic high-level decision makers and planners and analysts with kind of like, I think they say like out of the box or like outside the box considerations for analysis of national military intelligence issues. And this was within what was called the Joint Interagency, Intergovernmental, and Multinational Environment. Nice acronym, JIM. And what was envisioned in Proteus were ESIs, which were people who would one day populate the world, exceedingly high functioning people, ESIs. So you can see the new concept of social strata in the names that are given to people, to classes of people like the tweaked, the freaked, and the geeked. Should I expand?
Yes, if it is possible, because I'm not sure our audience are familiar with this.
So the tweaked are the tweaked abilities. They come from the integration of singularity technologies. with individuals' biological systems.
Mhm.
So you have like biofeedback and virtual reality
Mhm.
will also help people achieve like exceptional mental states.
Mhm.
Um,
It's incredible. Incredible.
yeah. Then you have like this will be the tweaked will be the category of the tweaked will be offered to like a select number, select group of people. And they'll have like access to quote unquote longevity technologies, and they'll be able to leverage the advantages to live for decades longer than ordinary. And the tweaked are it's envisioned that the tweaked will comprise sort of like the mainstream ESIs, those who will benefit most from these broad broad front of technologies. And then you've got the freaked. These are like quote unquote new creations, cyborgs or humans with significant mechanized parts. You might remember from '70s, the $6 Million Man.
Yeah.
You remember that show?
Yeah, I remember that was. I remember it was a series episode. I'm old enough to remember.
Yeah,
that. Yes.
Remember that too. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, this category reminded me of like Steve Austin, man barely alive, but we can rebuild him, right?
Yes.
So AI guided robots, clones designed for single functions, group minds operating through open source mental systems via embedded quantum chips. And the freaked will be seen as like kind of the outliers of the singularity.
Yes.
And then you've got the last category, which are the geeked. And these are individuals who are probably on the lower strata. They're unenhanced individuals who depend upon like wearables, external devices.
Yes.
Kind of, I suppose you can put a lot of people today in this category, we're a bunch of geeks walking around with our mobile phones, and we have to use these to achieve a kind of competitive edge in this future global society.
Yes.
We'll have some access to supercomputing and control of virtual worlds leveraged into real world advantage.
Yes.
And
yes, you continue, Dr. Brody.
And so it's observed even back in 2007, 2008 that the geeked are essentially already with us. They're in high tech industry, and so like many of the abilities, it's been observed that we owe to technology would probably have been considered magic.
Yes. Yes. I was just wondering, like, how the first category that you mentioned earlier, how the people will be selected. Will it be, if you have money, you can apply for having all this enhancement, or the people will be chosen who will be in the first category of the three you mentioned?
That's a great question. It seems to me that we're already, self-selecting. I mean, that, for example, in some parts of Europe, some countries in Europe, from reports that I've heard, some, especially young people, are already lining up for their for their, for their freak or their tweak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they want to be integrated, for example, with new chips that will, connect them to the financial services. And
yes. So these three categories that you mentioned will be the servant, right? Not the the masters are above them. The three that you mentioned would be considered the servant of what we call the crypto rulers.
That's what it seems to be.
Okay.
Yeah, that appears to be. So some servants will have exceptionally high ability.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose one way that you can think about it is the new films that have been exceptionally popular over the past at least 10 years, Avengers and, the superhero genre, where you begin to see almost a cultural conditioning of, upgraded entities. So what I'm talking about, it seems so science fiction.
Yeah.
So incredibly absurd, but it's there in the literature.
Dr. Brody, where our audience can find your work? Like if they want to know more, where, can you give them some information about where they can find your work?
Well, I'm a co-editor for a journal, Propaganda in Focus.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the articles that over the past few years focused mostly on COVID issues, transhumanism. You can find them there. It's an interdisciplinary journal. Lots of really interesting contributors to the journal, not just in transhumanism, but issues that of public import, where people are write about all sorts of forms and practices and techniques of propagandizing. So probably Propaganda in Focus would be a good resource. The other of I suppose a bibliography
Mm-hmm.
on ResearchNet. Some of the selections of research that I've done and published can be found on ResearchGate.
Yes, really, I would like to say thank you very much, Dr. Brody. It's very, very, very informative and very fascinating research. Are you working on a future project, research project at this time?
Working on a book with my collaborators in this area. We've been bouncing around a few titles. I think we're near titling the new book. It's a collection of previous essays and new material that I think will be very surprising. Very surprising. We've been doing a deep dive on the white papers, especially that have been published.
Yes.
We expect sometime in the autumn to have it out. Yeah.
Okay.
It's most of it's written. It's just it needs to be edited, and it's so we'll have that out, and hopefully in the autumn.
Very good, very good. I wish you good luck, Dr. Brody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Have a nice day.
You too. You too. Yes.
All right.